ahead to the Gospels, which are the first 4 books of the New Testament in the Bible. The writers of the Gospels tell us a story about the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And as many of you know, Jesus called disciples to follow him, to learn from him, and to become like him. But sometimes, well, many times, the disciples Jesus called were not the people most would expect. We will certainly see that today. First, though, we start here. If you can't tell, this is a tax collector's booth. Do you know what you do here? Yeah, you collect taxes, obviously. But it's a little more complicated than that. You see, in Jesus' day, the land of Israel was ruled by the Romans. And the Jewish people had to pay taxes to the Romans to live in their own land. And to make matters worse, the Romans hired local Jewish tax collectors to do the dirty work of collecting these taxes. And if those Jewish people wanted to earn a living for themselves, they'd have to charge extra and keep it for themselves. For Jewish people, tax collectors working for the Roman Empire were seen as some of the worst people in the entire region. But this is where our story starts today. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew. He was sitting at the tax collector's booth. So here, sat Matthew, a Jewish tax collector working for the Romans. Hey, I've got an idea. Let's answer a question about Matthew before we continue our story. How do you think someone would describe him? What are a few short statements? Do you think there was a chance that maybe Matthew thought those things about himself too? And to make matters worse, Jesus showed up. The Son of God, the perfect, sinless one. Jesus came to be near a guy like this? What would Jesus say? Maybe he'd call him one of those statements that you just gave me, right? Let's check out what he said. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew. He was sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him. Matthew got up and followed him. Whoa! Jesus didn't yell at Matthew. He didn't remind Matthew how terrible it was that he worked for the Romans and took money from his own people. Jesus simply told Matthew to follow him. But to follow Jesus, what would Matthew have to leave? Right, all of this. Following Jesus meant becoming a disciple of Jesus. And becoming a disciple of Jesus meant that life for Matthew was about to completely change. And not just for Matthew. Later, Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. Many tax collectors and sinners came. They ate with Jesus and his disciples. You see, Jesus didn't only show up at Matthew's booth. Jesus went to Matthew's house. And apparently so did a whole lot of other people who had some bad reputations. To ask our question from earlier, how would someone describe them? They were sinners. They were the kind of people you would not want to hang around. Some might have thought they were probably too far gone for God to reach them. And at least that is what others would say. But again, here was Jesus pulling up a spot at the dinner table with them. And Matthew and the disciples weren't the only ones who saw this. Check it out. The Pharisees saw this. So they asked the disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" The Pharisees didn't like what they saw happening at Matthew's house. But who were the Pharisees? They were religious leaders for the Jewish people. Let's go back to our question. If we ask that same question, how would someone describe you to a Pharisee? They might say something like this: "I know the scriptures better than anyone else," or "I keep every single command that God gave us in the law of Moses." Or maybe, "I stay separate from all the other sinners around here." Actually, though, Jesus had a lot of problems with this group. One of his big problems with them was not that they took God's law seriously, but rather it was that they used God's law as an excuse to look down on other people and make themselves look superior. You can almost hear it in that question they asked. Why does your teacher eat with them? But Jesus was quick to respond. Jesus heard this, so he said, "Those who are healthy don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Go and learn what this means. I want mercy and not sacrifice. I have not come to get those who think they are right with God to follow me. I have come to get sinners to follow me." When do you need a doctor most? When you're sick and hurting. Jesus was talking about people like Matthew. Jesus said, I'm like a doctor. I'm here to help those who are sick and hurting. I'm here for the sinners, not for the ones who think they have it all together. Here's the thing. What Matthew did at his booth influenced the way everybody saw him and treated him, except for Jesus. Jesus still came to Matthew and asked Matthew to follow him. And here's the thing about the Pharisees. What happened with the Pharisees and what they did influenced the way that everybody saw and treated them, except for Jesus. He refused to believe that just because they had a special title or looked good on the outside, that they were more important than anyone else. Jesus can change those who think they are too bad, and Jesus can change those that think they are too good. Because even though Jesus said, I have not come for those who think they are right with God, people who think they are right with God have come to the wrong conclusion. Nobody is right with God without Jesus. Not even the Pharisees were. Everybody needs him. Matthew saw it, the sinners saw it, but sadly, not everyone does. We started today by asking, how would someone describe you? The answers from a tax collector and a Pharisee couldn't be more different. But what if we changed the question? Instead of, how would someone describe you? Let's ask, how does God describe you? Loved by God, created in God's image, worthy of forgiveness, one who Jesus was sent for. All of these are true. True for Matthew, true for the Pharisees, and true for you and me. So let's be honest for a moment. Are we ever guilty of doing what the Pharisees did in this story? We make snap decisions about people or give them a reputation based on the mistakes that they've made. We might say, oh no, that kid, they never do anything right. But then we turn around and we label others or ourselves by saying, oh, that kid, they do everything right. You see, it's easy to start believing these descriptions about other people or about ourselves. The tax collector is the villain and the Pharisee is the hero to most people. But Jesus said that they both need God. And God's description of you is the only description that counts. So today I want you to think about this question.
Reveal the question.
How would you describe yourself? Have you ever been tempted to feel like the tax collector? Like you're too bad? Or the Pharisee, seeing yourself as too good? Think about those four statements. Loved by God, created in God's image, worthy of forgiveness, one who Jesus was sent for. How does that change the way that you describe yourself?